it felt like flying. It felt like jumping off a building, and then, oh, right before I hit the ground, I flew. But then there were lots of times where I thought, oh my God, I'm going to crash again. Sorry about the mess.
This is the first film you've written, directed, and it's a personal film for you. So walk us through how this journey started.
As you know, the film is set in Zimbabwe. I grew up in South Africa, and there were many, many parallels. And I more wanted to play the role of the mother. That was what started me on the journey. And then it took about 6 years. I was very, very slow. I wrote the screenplay, one sort of page, one scene at a time. Once I had the screenplay, I actually couldn't find a director. In this long, circuitous way, my husband actually said, well, why don't you direct it?
So when your husband asks you, why don't you direct it, do you feel like, yeah, I can do that? Does it feel like something you were ready to take on?
Not right away. I had to really think about it. I was so worried that somebody else wouldn't tell the story that I wanted to tell. I was terrified of the technical side of the directing, but then I thought about it and thought, I've been on enough sets. I've watched good directors direct, but it's really the story that I felt was in my cells by then, and I just thought I did know I knew how to tell it.
So when it came to the screenplay, the book covers a much larger span of time than your film. How did you settle on really Bobo at a much younger age as the part of the story you wanted to tell, and what did you unlock in that?
So I don't know if anyone here has read the book, but the book, the mother is just this incredible character, and she's woven through it the 20 years of the book. When I wrote the first screenplay, that's what I wrote. But she's not a character that you want to watch, I think, for an hour and a half. The racism, the sort of terrible dark periods that she would go through, I kept whittling away and making that part smaller and smaller. And it dawned on me one day, I thought, the only way to really tackle the race issue and to show, and it's the way I remember South Africa, sort of the imprint on my own body and soul of what that time was like, was to tell it from the child's point of view. So when I made that switch, that's when I thought, okay, now I think I know how to tell the story.
So you find Lexi, this incredible young actress, and she had never acted before, which was something that was important to you.
Yeah, so I used a casting director, and the kids would come in and they'd tried so hard and they'd learnt their lines, and it was all very performative, and it wasn't natural and it wasn't authentic. And I just thought, with something like this and trying to tell this intimate and real of a story, we're really going to be sunk if the kid feels like she's acting. So we put out a Facebook sort of bulletin board. I said I want a dirty, feral, wild little child, barefoot, unspoiled, unsophisticated, who likes horses and maybe could ride a motorbike. And someone popped up and said, I know a kid like that in this faraway town, and that's how we found her.
It does feel, watching it, like this is a director who knows acting, which of course makes sense. But did you feel like you had a real command over that part of the film, over working with her, the other actors, and kind of getting these performances out of the film?
Interestingly, I feel like I had much more of a command over working with the actors and working with her. I didn't like jumping in and acting in it. I didn't like not having a director. I'm somebody who really depends on directors. I felt a little bit like I was flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't have time, because we only had the child for a short time every day. I didn't really have time to watch playback, so I was like, did I get it? Maybe we got to move on and we just keep going. So I only really knew what I'd done in the editing, and I loved the directing. I loved taking sort of a lifetime of longing. I saw this child so much as myself, as a young child, and so I could really sort of nurture that, but also let her run free and let her be wild.
I'm so interested in you kind of going back, to this part of the world, to where you grew up, to make this film. Even just in the sort of how you scouted it, where you shot it, and what you wanted to bring alive in the actual sort of physical details of the film.
So I couldn't shoot it in Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe was in a lot of turmoil. So we couldn't go back and shoot in Zimbabwe, but I knew South Africa well. I knew that we had good crews there. The look was slightly different. South Africa's a much dustier, more rain-deprived area than where Alexandra Fuller's home was. But for me, it was very familiar. The light was familiar, so I knew it. When we were doing tests, I said, I know this is what the light should look like, even if the topography wasn't entirely exactly the same. I mean, I could have picked another African country because there's something about Africa that is just Africa. You can't really shoot it anywhere. Someone said, "Could you shoot this in New Mexico?" And you just couldn't. I think it just had to be in Africa. But South Africa is close enough, and even some of the characters you'll note were South African. So there are a lot of the parallels. But going back actually completed something for me in being able to shoot it there.
Yeah, you've mentioned seeing yourself through this character in a lot of ways, and of course there's the racism that she's hearing and parroting. There's the wildness you talked about in the Slow Girl. What was that feeling that you remembered from that time that maybe you felt excited to bring up, or maybe that felt therapeutic in some way to explore in a film?
I think I remember, it was shocking as an American, because I was born in America, to move as an American child to Africa and encounter what life was like there. And I remember there being a disconnect between what I was seeing and what adults were saying. And kids are wily and smart. I was sort of a wily coyote of a kid. And I remember just sort of observing and feeling like there was something about it that was wrong. But at the same time, feeling the power that you have as a child. And I loved playing with that with her, that I can close my eyes and I can make people disappear. I can do magic too. It's only as we get older that we realize how powerless we really are, in the world. But children, and she realizes that by the end, I think something's been broken, something's been built, but something's been broken. And I think that I had that idea, when I was very young, of just, I'm all powerful and I can control the world around me. And it's so obvious that I actually couldn't, nor could she.
You mentioned some nerves about the technical aspect of directing. So as you got into it, how did you come to master it?
I just had to do it because I was going to sink or swim. It felt like flying. It felt like jumping off a building, and then, right before I hit the ground, I flew. But then there were lots of times where I thought, oh my God, I'm going to crash again. There wasn't a day that I didn't that I wasn't terrified, but exhilarated at the same time, that I didn't, I stopped being able to sleep as this was going on. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and worry about what we needed to do for the next day. But all the while, I did have this feeling of, this might just end up being a home movie that I show my friends and family. But that's really what I thought it was going to be. But I did it, and I told the story, and I've exorcised something that I needed to,
Well, I don't think I'm alone in saying I can't wait to see what you do next. But Embeth, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, David.